Hi, this is the second video of a series describing uncertainty and risks. In this video, we're going to describe and outline the first chapter of these three chapters on probability and probability models, and that is chapter 5 in your textbook. Chapter 5 introduces you to probabilities. So what are probabilities? Probabilities are frequency metrics of how likely it is that a particular outcome may occur. So a probability is a measure of uncertainty. And what it does is it tells you how likely some specific outcome is in relation to all possible outcomes. And so in order for us to measure probabilities, we have to first be able to find something called a probability space. And a probability space is a complete list of all possible outcomes, including repetitions. Or something called an event. So prior to being able to build a probability space, what we must do is identify all the outcomes and identify the event that we are trying to describe, trying to understand the uncertainties that surround it. So outcomes are essentially a list of possibilities, and an event is some process or subject or object that we're interested in, whose resolution is not for sure or not certain, hence the term uncertainty. So for example, an event could be an online client may click the like button or not. So that could be an event, some event that may be very interesting to a company such as Facebook, or such as Twitter, or such as Google, or any online media company that's tracking human behavior by determining how much preference there is for a particular idea or product or service based on how many people like something versus not. And the outcomes are like or not like. Then the probability space is essentially a compendium of all of the responses that we see. When people click on like, we mark a like, and if people don't mark a like, then that person bypassed the opportunity to express strong preferences for an idea, a product, or a service online. So that's an event. And we typically don't study events in that fashion, directly in that particular way or context. We will usually create a model, a structure model of that. So instead of talking about clicking on like or not, we'll talk about a coin toss as an event. and the coin toss ends up being heads or tails. And this becomes a model of the event liking or not liking some particular social media post. So what we do in chapter 5 then is follow this particular sequence of logic of creating a definition of an event, listing all the outcomes of the event, then creating a mathematical space where we can count things called a probability space, which is a list of all the outcomes in the set that we observe. And then we apply something called the law of large numbers and randomness, those two principles, to then use 9 rules of probability in order to measure probabilities. So we take advantage of principles like randomness and like the law of large numbers, and we use them to then build 9 rules of probability that allow us to measure these likelihoods of occurrences. And the 9 rules are, the first one is called the basic rule. The second one is called the overall rule. The third one is called the rule of complements. The fourth one is called the marginal rule. The fifth one is called the conditional rule. And then there are 2 versions of something called the multiplication rule of probability. Multiplication with independence, independent outcomes, and multiplication without independent outcomes, or general. And then we have 2 rules called addition rules. Those are the addition rule with disjoint outcomes, and we have the addition rule that is general. And each of these 9 rules employs techniques that allow you to then find the probabilities of different outcomes. So this will essentially, this is coverage of the exact format that chapter 5 will follow. So I'm going to put here at the very top that this is a chapter 5 map. In other videos that you will find in your modules on Canvas for this class, you're going to see short videos that refer to the application of these 9 rules. One last thing to remember is that these probability spaces that we are referring to here are arranged in many different ways. So throughout the chapter, you're going to see probability spaces that sometimes are in the form of a list of items, like when I listed like and dislike. But you could also have probability spaces in contingency tables, very much like the contingency tables that we covered when we were describing categorical data. You may also see probability spaces as decision trees or tree diagrams. You may also see probability spaces drawn as sets. To the extent that we can draw these probability spaces in different ways, we can sometimes circumvent or find an easy way of applying these 9 rules of probability directly visually into these particular ways of looking at the data. So I hope that this map of chapter 5 helps you have one place where you can then view how we estimate the likelihood of different outcomes in uncertain events, which is the purpose of chapter 5. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it was very helpful.